Well, today we are going to continue to take a look at the life of David. Last week we began by starting with taking a look at Saul, and today actually continues because the interaction between David and Saul is so key and vital in David's life. If you have your Bibles, turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter 18. So David, just as a recap, David was a young man who was a shepherd. He was the youngest of the 8 sons of Jesse, and he was anointed by God to be the next king. Saul had disobeyed God on multiple occasions. He had rejected God, and so God rejected him. And then David, last week we talked about the famous story that he goes and he slays Goliath. He defends the honor of God against this Philistine who was cursing God. And now we see that David has been brought into the household of Saul, and Saul has placed him in a position of leadership and authority. And we talked last week that David is probably around 15 years old. And so here he is, a young man, 15, 16 years old, and he is out leading campaigns, having success. And we'll see today how that goes for him. So in 1 Samuel chapter 18, beginning in verse 5, we'll read chapter 18, 5 through 15. It says that whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs, and with timbrels and lyres. And they danced and they sang, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." Verse 8, Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. He complained. He said, "They have credited David with tens of thousands," he thought, "but me only thousands. What more can he have but the kingdom?" And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. The next day, an evil spirit came from God and came forcefully on Saul, and he was prophesying in the house. And while David was playing the lyre, as he usually did, Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, "I will pin David to the wall." But David eluded him twice. Saul was afraid of David, because the Lord was with David, but he had departed from Saul. So he sent David away from him and gave him command over 1,000 men, and David led the troops in their campaigns. And everything that he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. Verse 15, when Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. Nobody likes the young guy, right? How many times have we maybe seen this out in your own place of work? You're the veteran, you kind of know what everything's going on, everybody looks to you for advice and leadership, and then some young guy comes along. He's the know-it-all, and everything he does just touches, it turns to gold. We've all had those friends. We had a group of guys, a men's group that I used to be in, and there was this one guy. Everything he did just seemed to just work out. He had a great job, made great money, drove a great car, had a great family. He literally built his own house. Like, in addition to working his full-time job, he would come home and he literally built his own home, and it was like a beautiful, not like a shack, like a beautiful home. And it really just culminated one weekend. We went on a guys trip and we went canoeing, or actually kayaking and camping. And there's probably 7 or 8 of us. And after 7, 8, 9 miles, whatever it was, seemed like forever. Most of us were dirty and tired and worn out. So here's the thing, just picture this. So you're going with the stream, right? And if you've ever kayaked or canoed, you go with the stream, it's a lot easier. Well, we got to this exit point, and this particular guy said, hey, I know a place. It's about maybe like 15, 20 minutes downstream. It's a really awesome cave. We can go in there and see this cool stuff, yada, yada, yada. We're like, okay, so we go do that. It's about a mile more in the trip. Okay. But the thing is, you have to then turn around and then come back the mile back to the exit place, now against the current. If you've ever paddled against the current, you know that that's not easy. I will just tell you, I'm just totally transparent with you. The last maybe 100 yards or I don't know, I could see the exit point. I literally got out of my kayak and walked in the mud that my feet like sank down to my ankles. I lost one of my shoes. I finally got to the end of this thing and drug my kayak up onto the shore, exhausted, filthy, dirty, not in a good mood. And this man, he just paddled. He just, like he skimmed over the top of the water. And he just right up to the edge of the bank and hops out. Here we go. And I remember I verbally said, and some of the other guys agreed with me, like, could you just pretend? Just pretend to be tired. Pretend that this was actually exhausting. Could you just lay down in the mud and get dirty for a second? Like, he had not even got wet. He never fell out of the boat. I got mugged by a tree on this trip. True story. My wife will tell you this. I was kayaking. I had gone through some rapids. I thought I did really good, so I turned around to watch my friends to go through it, not realizing there was a tree where the limb was hanging out over the water. Somehow it caught me, flipped me. I went about, I don't know, it probably was 10 feet, felt like 100. Underwater, I come up, gasping for air, totally disoriented. I lost my wedding ring, my watch, my sunglasses, and my cell phone. Totally mugged by this tree. And this guy never even got in the water. And so I share that story to say is like, it's probably one of the closest times I could feel like Saul. Like David, like, dude, just everything he threw at David, David's like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, give me 1,000 men. Okay, cool. I'm in charge of them. I'll go and wipe out the enemies. I'll have success. And when people sing songs about me, I killed tens of thousands. You only killed 1,000. And this begins a time in David's life where Saul burns with hatred in his heart for David. His jealousy for him is so much. Saul becomes jealous of David, and it becomes this hatred of him. If we take a look at verses 8 and 9, it says Saul was upset by the song. He said he was so upset by this refrain, it displeased him greatly. Boy, that is like an understatement. It displeased him. I'm displeased when I ordered a salad and they gave me the wrong dressing. This is, I am going to burn with hatred until the day I die. That's how Saul felt about David. They've credited David with tens of thousands, he was worried. And I only get credit for 1,000. In verses 13 through 15, we read that Saul tried to kill David. First of all, he puts him in charge of these soldiers and he sends them out. And when he goes out, now if you're David and you think about it, you got this king who put you in charge of 1,000 men. He's 15, maybe 16 years old at this point. And he's got grown men under his command. Saul probably did that thinking these guys are going to turn on him. They might kill him themselves. But instead, David is so successful. We read later, it says that they loved him. But what happened? It says, verse 15, he saw how successful he was, and he was afraid of him. Later on in verses 20 through 21, we see that David has a marriage proposal from Saul. Saul says he finds out that his daughter loves David, and so he tries to marry him off. It says, verses 20 and 21, it says, Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David, and when Saul found out about that, he was pleased. He says to himself, I will give her to him, he thought, so that he may be snared, and so that he may be in the hands of the Philistines and killed. And what he does is he says, I want you to go and kill 100 Philistines as the bridal price for marrying my daughter. Thinking this guy's going to go out. There's no way he's going to kill 100 Philistines. They're going to kill him. I've got the perfect trap. David goes out and not only kills 100, he kills 200. Saul, it says in verses 28 and 29, it says, when Saul realized that the Lord was with David and that his daughter Michal loved David, Saul became still more afraid of him, and he remained his enemy the rest of his days. Saul tried to get rid of David. He tried to pin him against the wall with his spear. He tried to send him out and with the group of men and thought that the men might turn on him. And then when that didn't work out, he sends him into the Philistines' camp and says, I want you to bring me back 100 Philistines. And David said, no problem. Watch this. I'll do 200. God protected David. And Saul, again, we talked about this last week. Notice Saul's heart. Never in this part of the story do we read that he ever regretted, repented, never sought out the Lord. He constantly is just focused on David. He is only focused on the things of this world, never seeking out the spiritual. This begins an 8-year period, a nearly decade-long time of cat and mouse between David and Saul. Saul tries to kill David time and time again. Turn with me to 1 Samuel 19 and 23. From 19 to 23, we read. We're not going to read through all of this, but I encourage you to go back and take a look at it. Saul starts to seek out David, starts pursuing him. In fact, it tells us in times that he organizes a group of 3,000 elite soldiers to go chase him down. David has his own allies. First of all, his wife, Michal, who is Saul's daughter. And then also Saul's son, Jonathan, becomes his closest and deepest friend. Between Michal and Jonathan, they warn him, and he's able to escape. He goes and he visits, David does, he leaves and he goes and visits other towns, sometimes just seeking refuge. And often what he finds is that people just end up turning him back over to the king. They find out David's there. They alert the king. The king sends his men in to try to kill David. And this goes on and on and on. And I want to just highlight two particular stories. In chapter 19 to 20, we read that David goes and visits one of the priests. And when he visits the priest, there was another man there who was loyal to Saul. And that person goes back and tells Saul. And when Saul comes to find David, David had already left. And then he kills the priest and all the other priests there in that town because they had helped David. Psalm 52 is a response to this betrayal. There's a man there. His name is D-O-E-G. It's not Doug. I keep wanting to say Doug. I'm going to call him Doug. It's actually Doeg, but it's like the Hebrew version of Doug to me. I don't know. So Doeg, I mean, it's such a name of a betrayer, right? If your name is Doug, I apologize. It's just like such a basic, just like Doeg. And Doeg goes back and tells him, in chapter 52 of Psalm, we read that David laments this. And he just despises this man for betraying him and this priest. In Psalm 52, he reads and he says this. David says, "Here now is the man who did not make God his stronghold, but trusted in his great wealth and grew strong by destroying others." He recognized, see, Doeg, one of the things that he did was that he was the chief shepherd for Saul. He had a position of authority, and he was rewarded for betraying David. And notice again, we have this dichotomy of people who trust in the Lord and those who trust in other men and trust in the things of this world. And David recognizes that. He says, this man did not make God his stronghold, but trusted in great wealth. But David says, but I am like an olive tree flourishing in the house of God. I trust in God and his unfailing love forever and ever. In Psalm 52, we read that David is expressing, look, there is a definite difference between Saul and his men and me and mine. They trust in each other and in fellow man and wealth and things of this world. I trust in God. And throughout this decade of him evading God, we see this time and time again that he continues to trust in God. Psalm 54 is a response to the people of Ziph who betrayed him. In Psalm 54, he makes a comment about this town. David had gone in and had protected those people from the Philistines, but even though God had protected these people, they still rejected him and sought out Saul to come and kill David. And David escapes, but he writes this in Psalm 54. Save me, O God, by your name. Vindicate me by your might. Hear my prayer, O God. Listen to the words of my mouth. Arrogant foes are attacking me. Ruthless people are trying to kill me. People without fear for God. Saul pursues him and tries to kill him, but David remains steadfast in his belief in God and God's plan for his life. And we know that that is true because he spares Saul's life, not once, but twice. David's response to Saul trying to kill him is mercy. In 1 Samuel chapter 24 and 26, we read about two different times when Saul was in the grasp of David. David could have killed him, but he did not. We read in chapter 24 where David's men were alerted that Saul was out looking for him, and they take refuge in a cave. Saul goes into the cave to go to the bathroom. It's one of these stories. You gotta love it in the Bible. Real people, real place, real time. In Bible times, they went to the bathroom. He goes into a cave to go to the bathroom. While he's doing his business, David sneaks up to him and cuts the corner of his robe. Ew. If you're cut, you got to be really close to cut off the corner of his robe. And B, Saul, you need to be more aware of your surroundings. But David doesn't kill him. He could have. Saul leaves the cave. He goes outside, and we read in verse 9 of chapter 24, it says, why did you listen to men? David says, why do you listen to the men who say, David is bent on harming you? He goes out and he tells him, he says, look, here's this robe. Here's the corner. Look at your robe. I got the corner of it right here. Saul realizes he could have been killed. And David yells at him, and he explains to him in chapter 24. I'm having trouble talking this morning. Chapter 24, verses 8 through 13. Let me read a little bit of this story. It says, David went out of the cave and called to Saul. He says, my Lord the king. When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down and prostrated himself before with his face to the ground. And he said to Saul, why do you listen to men when they say, David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord, because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece that I cut from the corner of your robe, but I did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs that you have done to me. But my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers comes evil deeds. My hand will not touch you. He explains to Saul, he says, look, these men are trying to explain, they're trying to tell you that I'm out to get you. I'm not. I could have killed you right here. Here is proof. We read in chapter 7 of Psalm a response to those that David says, he's commenting in Psalm chapter 7, he's commenting to those people who think that he's out to kill Saul. We read, whoever is pregnant with evil conceives trouble and gives birth to disillusionment. Whoever digs a hole and scoops it out falls into the pit that they have made. The trouble they cause recoils on them. Their violence comes down on their own heads. David in Psalm 7 is responding to those who are saying these things about him. He's saying to the world, I am not the one who is plotting to do harm. You are. You are the one, as he says in Psalm 7, you are the one who digs a hole, but it is a snare for yourself. I am not doing these things. And maybe you can identify with with David in these situations where you've been that person that you've been accused. People have said things and quote unquote testified against you, spread rumors about you. And you, like David, say, I'm not the one. My hands are innocent in this. The second time in in 1 Samuel chapter 26, David has the chance to kill Saul. Saul and his men are camped out, and David and his men sneak into the camp. They get into his tent, and they take items from his tent and then come out and mock them, showing them, I could have killed you, but I did not. 1 Samuel 26, verses 9 through 12. Again, he stands before the people shouting out to Saul, I could have killed you. In chapter 26, verse 9 says this, David said to Abishai, don't destroy him. For who can he's one of the men, he's telling these men, you can't do this. Why? Because who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As sure as the Lord lives, he said, the Lord himself will strike him, or his time will come when he will die, or he will go into battle and perish. But the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. Now get the spear and water jug that is near his head and let's go. He could have killed Saul, but he didn't. In verse 10, when he says, surely the Lord himself will strike him down, or his time will come, and he may die or go into battle and perish. David trusts God to deal with his enemies. This gives evidence of David's heart. Rather than taking things into his own hands and doing his own actions, which is exactly what Saul did, which is what Saul did to reject God, David continues to live out the pattern that he himself will not do the thing that God is destined to do. In Psalms 141, we read this, where David says, for your name's sake, Lord, preserve my life in your righteousness. Bring me out of trouble. In your unfailing love, silence my enemies. Destroy all my foes, for I am your servant. David understood and gave the right person the job. It was not his task to kill Saul. It was not his task to make things right and be judge and executioner. It was God's place, and David trusted him to do that. Time and time again, David could have taken Saul's life. And over this decade of time period that we read about, where cat and mouse, they chase each other, they get very close. Time and time again, David repents to the Lord. If I've done something wrong, please forgive me, save me, and God saves him. Time and time again, Saul seeks to kill David. So what can we learn from this interaction? We have one person, Saul, whose heart is filled with hatred, burning to kill, to destroy David. And then you have David, on the other hand, who shows nothing but mercy and faith in God. So I think that there's two things that we can learn. First of all, David trusted in God even when distressed. Like, let's not just whitewash over this. This was extremely stressful to David. David wasn't just like, oh, I trust the Lord, everything's happy. It's all Skittles and rainbows. He was filled with deep heartache and anguish. Two Psalms in particular echo this. In Psalm 13, verses 1 and 2, David cries out, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart?" David was definitely filled with anguish. His life was literally on the line every day. And even when he went into places he thought he could be safe, it wasn't. And men and women would turn on him and they would report back to the king. In Psalm 31, he says this, "My life is consumed by anguish and my years by groaning. My strength fails because of my affliction and my bones grow weak. Because of all of my enemies, I am the utter contempt of my neighbors and an object of dread to my close friends. Those who see me on the street flee from me. I am forgotten as though I am dead. I have become like broken pottery." Now, I don't know if you've ever had days or moments or even extended periods of time when you feel this way. And if you never have, I pray that you never do. But the human experience tells me that there's probably a good chance that you will. That you will be in your house, on the floor, before the Lord, and maybe almost verbatim saying something to this effect: "How long will you ignore me? How long am I going to be broken and you will not put me back together again?" My days are filled with anguish. I grow weak. My friends don't want to see me. Maybe you've had those times where you're like, if I just go visit my friends, maybe then cheer me up. But your friends don't answer your texts. They don't answer your calls. They turn the lights off when you knock on the door. Like, you're just broken. What will you do in those moments? What David did was he trusted in the Lord. Psalm 13, verses 5 and 6 says, "But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise for he has been good to me. In Psalm 31, verses 14 and 15, he says, but I trust in you, Lord. This is right after he says, I am like broken pottery. He says, but I am trusting in you, Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of my enemies and from those who pursue me. I don't want you to have bad times in your life, but as a Christian, I want you to just know that if they come, it's okay to feel bad, to be broken, to be sad, depressed, anxious, all of these feelings. But the thing is, we can't live there. We have to turn, as David did, back to God and say, even in this, I will sing to you, and I will praise you, and I will worship you. Is it easy? No. It's extremely hard. It's always interesting. The way that God wired our brains, we can smell a smell, hear a sound, see a sight, and it can instantaneously transport us back to another event. You guys ever had those experiences? And I had one of those this morning. I haven't heard that song, God of Wonders, for a long time. It used to be one of my favorite songs ever. Still is. I still love that song. Because I love, the Bible is just, it's just filled from beginning to end. God is the creator of everything. We read again, as Melissa read from Psalm earlier, David continued to read. He goes, you're the one who put the stars into the sky and the moon. And you're the creator. And because of that, we should worship you. Because you are the God of wonders. Do you guys remember Y2K? Remember how the world was going to come to an end? Now, for those of you who were born after 2000, which is like half the people in this room, you have no reference to this. But for those of us who are alive, I remember watching, the clock tick down, and that was going to happen. And the church where I attended at the time, we actually did a presentation. There were songs and singing. There was drama. A variety show makes it seem probably is the most accurate term, but it was all depicting just relationship with God, and it just all centered around the idea that, here we are, we all have this shared feeling of doom that was coming at us. And the end of that variety show, the end of that event, I did a betrayal, a monologue, if you will, of a man who is filled with stress and anxiety, and a man who, at the end of this monologue, makes the decision to take his own life. And then I gave my testimony about my father, who had taken his life at that time. It was 1997, so this is 1999. It was very fresh, very relative. And in between the end of my monologue and me giving my testimony, they sang that song. And I can still, that's why I was sitting over here this morning, I can remember being behind the curtain, and I heard the song time, because we did this rehearsals, and then we did multiple showings of this. And I could still go back to that moment, being behind the curtain and hearing that song. And in those moments of brokenness, still saying, Lord, you are the God of wonders. And that gave me the courage to go out and give my testimony. the sad thing is that the man who sang that song was an older brother to one of my childhood friends. I happen to know him. About a year later, he took his own life. And so I was sitting here this morning, all these feelings are in me. And I see David. So when I read these words to you, these are not just words. And maybe in your own life you've had those moments. And if you're going through one of those moments right now, I want you to hear what David's saying. Even though my strength fails and I am broken, even though my closest friends don't even want me around, I'm contempt, but my neighbors don't even want to see me. I'm broken like pottery. Even still, I trust in your unfailing love. I recognize that I will sing the Lord's praise. You are good to me. David trusted in God even when he was distressed. The second thing is that we need to love our enemies. We need to love those who don't love us. Jesus said it in Matthew, he said, look, it's one thing that you can love those people who like you. Even pagans do that. Even non-believers do that. You want to be a child of God? You want to be a Christian? You want to be like me? Love those who don't love you. And it's one thing, like, when there's people in your life who, like, maybe they just don't like you. Like, hey, we just don't get along. Okay, cool. It's another thing when there are people that just openly don't like you, campaign against you, say things to try to ruin you. David could have killed Saul. He had every human right to do so. Self-defense, just from a man position of like, dude, you can't say stuff like that about me. But David doesn't. Instead, he shows mercy time and time again. He actually shows love. And next week, we're going to talk about when David takes the throne and Saul dies. David's reaction is totally unexpected. So again, I don't know where you're at in your life journey, but if you're in one of those times where you feel broken, or you're in one of those times where you have a nemesis, like who doesn't have, like this in all good shows, right? You have to have a nemesis. Somebody told me one time, it's like, if you don't have somebody not liking you, then you're never really stood for anything. So I guess I've stood for some things because I've had some people in life say things. One example is I had a dear, close friend, one of my best friends, like a brother in high school. We were super close. And I was supposed to be, a matter of fact, I was supposed to be his best man at his wedding. And long story short, I was not invited to the wedding. Was definitely not included in the wedding. And it was nearly a decade later that I finally reconnected with him, and I just had to ask him, like, what was that about? And it was because some people had said that I said things about his wife, which I'd never said, but when he heard them, he became angry and upset and immediately cut me out of his life. Now, we rectified, we reconciled, and we're friends, and we've done things in life together since then, and we're cool. But it was like, we wasted all that time. But I have to look at some of the people that I've cut out of my life. Maybe unfairly. And what have I missed out on? If you want to be like Jesus, Jesus says, love your enemies. Love the people who don't love you. Even though they may pursue you, may say things, love them. Even though you may feel justified to say hurtful things back, don't. I'm going to tell you right now, in complete honesty, it's hard. It's hard. The flesh loves to do that. But we need to be like David. Lord, I trust in you. If this person is truly an enemy of mine, you take care of it in your way. And the few times that I actually was patient enough to let God do those things, I've seen again and again and again, God takes care of it much more than I ever could. And actually, most of the situations, God has reconciled me with that person, and the relationship is even better. Again, I don't know where you're at in your life right now. I don't know if you are the person that's hating somebody or being hated. But either way, seek God, because his way is the best way.